everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at a game called 535. I don't know that this is a great name for a card game, but whatever. There's lots of games now that have numbers as their things. I'm not even sure what 535 means in this case. Anyway, this game has something to do with weather. Woo, there's no theme at all. And it is what is known as a card shedding game or ladder climbing game or whatever you might call them, where your goal is to get rid of the cards in your hand. Some people call this a trick-taking game, but that's not how I categorize it. Trick-taking games are like hearts where you're trying to win cards. Here you're just trying to clear the cards from your hand, thus the name card shedding. So there's a lot of these games out there. How does this one stack up? Let's take a look at how it plays. All right, this is a deck of cards that are numbered from 1 to 15. They show different kinds of weather on them. That means nothing. It's just a bunch of cards that are numbered from 1 to 15. And you're going to have a certain number of cards that you will build based on the number of players. It shows you here how many of each kind of card to use. You're going to be using 4 or 5 copies of each card and how many cards each player gets dealt. So you're going to have a handful of cards. And on a player's turn, they have 4 different things that they can do. One thing is lead. And if there's no cards on the table and that's what you have to do. When you lead, you're going to play a meld type. You can play a single card. Or you can play a set. You can play 2 or 3 cards of the same number. Or you can play a run, which would be 2 or more cards of consecutive numbers. Another thing you can do is you can overwrite somebody else. So if I had played a 3, you can play a higher number than that. You could play a 7. The next person could play a 13. The next person could play a 14. Obviously, when you get to 15, that can't be done anymore. And you just put your cards on top of the other cards that have been played. The only unique thing about this game is, so let's say if I play 2 3s, you would have to play 2 7s or 2 10s on top of them. But if you play a run, let's say I play a 13 and a 14, for you to beat that, you need to play numbers that are smaller, like an 11 and 12 will beat a 13 and 14. So for a run, you're going to play something that's lower. So a 1, 2, 3 is going to be the lowest thing that you can play. Another thing you do in your turn is you can add. So let's say an 11 or 12 are out here in the middle of the table. I can add 1, 2, or 3 cards to this. So I could add a 13 to this if I wanted to. I could add a 13 and a 14. I could add a 13, 14, 15. I could even add a 10, 13, 14. You can add 1, 2, or 3 cards. And then the final thing you can do in your turn is you can just pass. Usually you're only going to pass if you can't play anything. So this keeps going around the table. If everyone but one person passes, then the trick is over. It's called a trick. If all the cards are the same number in the middle, so 4 or 5 cards, depending on how many you started with. So let's say there's 5 3s in the middle, or there's a run of 5 cards, or if someone plays the number 8. 8 in this game is special. If there's ever an 8 in the middle, that kind of ends the trick immediately. All the cards are cleared away. And the person who did that, who caused that to happen, will lead the next trick. So, for example, let's say you play a 5, I play an 8, cleared. Now I get to play again. So I'm like, I'm going to start with 3 15s. You say, oh, well, I can't go higher than 3 15s, but I can add a 15. And this is what's like, we're playing a 4-player game. Now there's only 4 15s in the table. Those cleared. And you're like, and now I'm going to play 2 14s, and so on and so forth. You're just trying to get rid of all the cards. As soon as you run out of cards in your hand, the round ends immediately. Everyone else gets point chips equal to the value of your cards. So when you look at the cards here, there's a little tiny number. You see a 1 is a 3, a 4 is a 1, 8s are 5 points, so they're 1 to 5 points. 8s are the highest, and you take points. You don't want points. And then you just shuffle the cards up and go again. Once somebody gets to 20 or more points, the game ends, and whoever has the fewest points is the winner. My first problem with this game, well, I like how the cards look. I like the numbers. I like the little art on them. But it drives me nuts because the rule book says you have 45 weather cards, 1 to 5 rainy, 7 to 9 cloudy, 11 to 15 sunny. And I'm like, ooh. And everyone's like, ooh, what does that mean? There's even little symbols to help you. And then there's a tiny little note here that says this has no effect on gameplay. So either this is a setup for an expansion in the future, or it's a pain in the neck because people are constantly saying, what does it mean if I play raining cards? Nothing. They're all the same suit. I just found that to be weird. It's trying to add theme to a game that doesn't have any. The card quality is fine and everything works well, the point chips and everything. That was a weird choice. But let's talk about the game itself. So this is a card shedding games. And I tend to be amused by card shedding games, where the most famous in the world is probably Teach You. Teach You is one of these games, but there's a lot of them. You're just trying to get rid of the stuff from your hand. And they're usually fairly basic. This one also is pretty basic. There's not a lot of weird rules, although the runs having the smaller numbers win, and there is a little reference card that everybody has that will remind them of all the different things they can do, which is helpful, that the runs are smaller, but you'll still find yourself having to reorient yourself because you played 2 4s, I'll play 2 7s, and I'll play 2 9s, and then I played a 4 5 6. I'm like, well, I have a 7 8 9. Oh, wait, no, I can't beat that. It's just a weird thing. It does mean that 15s aren't necessarily the best number, and that's cool, but it's still a little bit to get your mind around. Where the game kind of falls apart for me a bit is the fact that you can add cards to a meld that's already out there. And when the meld reaches completion, if you have 4 or 5 of the same number, or 5 of a run, or anyone plays an 8 at all, it wipes and we keep playing. And what that means is, for me, there's almost no tension in the game. Someone plays 2 13s. I'm like, well, I got a 13. I guess I can play that on my turn. Now, granted, if I play a single 13, I'm setting up the other person who has a single 13 to play the 4th one, and then they have the hammer. So I'm not saying there's no strategy in the game at all. There is. But the 8s wiping everything around away reminds me of games like Pig Pile or Ghost from Richard Garfield, where you play cards and things wipe away. And that works, but those are also really basic games. And this makes, because of that, this makes this particular ladder climbing game feel basic. And I don't like that feeling. When I play these kind of games, I want to sit there with my cards and be like, And I am sitting here with my cards going, because that's what I do when I play these kind of games. But then someone plays a 4 5, and I'm like, oh, okay. The next person plays 6 7 8. They wipe it. Then they play 3 4s. And I'm like, oh, okay. And my mind just keeps changing the whole time to where the game feels random. Now, I'm being cautious. I'm not saying it's random, but it feels a lot more random, and it also feels easy because the cards keep wiping. It's very rare. Eventually, people have to pass, but it doesn't feel like a traditional card shedding game because the stuff in the middle clears so quickly. I don't know. I don't think it's bad. I have an amusing time playing it. I would give it a 6 out of 10 for me. It's just not enough to bring my attention back. The weird theming and the weird name don't help. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of these cool games out there. Teach You has Partners and The Bomb, and 4 Dragons has some really cool cards in it. And these games have this cool hook. This one's hook is, hey, the runs play backwards. But it's not that interesting, especially since cards get wiped so easily. So, it's fine for me anyway. So there you go. Maybe you'll like it, though. The overview hopefully will give you an idea if it's something you're interested in. That's 535, though. I'm Tom Vasel. We'll see you next time.